What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time to give you my 2024 NCAA men's basketball March Madness predictions here for the 2023-24 college basketball season. And it is finally here. March Madness is finally back here. I always look forward to March Madness every single year. And like I said, I don't do normally a lot of basketball content on this channel, but we did an SEC tournament prediction last week. That obviously did not really go well for me, but March Madness is finally back, so I'm going to give you some March Madness predictions here. I did this, of course, last year, but I didn't really do well in my bracket from last season when I look back on it. But now we're going to try to do a decent bracket here this year for 2024. There's no way you can get a perfect bracket, it seems like, every single year just because there's so many upsets, and this college basketball season has been so wild, and there's been so many upsets, and that happened in conference tournament week. So there's going to be probably a lot of upsets here, and this probably will be the most craziest March Madness that we've ever seen. So we're going to give you some predictions here before we get to the actual predictions for the bracket and the regions. We're going to predict the first four games here, so let's get right into it here with my March Madness predictions here for 2024. Here is my first four prediction here for the number 16 seed in the West region. It is Howard versus Wagner here for the number 16 seed in the West. I am going to pick Howard in this game, and normally I don't feel very confident with predictions either. I'm not going to feel very confident with all these predictions here. Usually these first four games are predictions that they normally don't really do a lot of predictions for the first four games, but I am going to pick Howard in this one to defeat Wagner in a pretty close one. So that's my prediction here for the first four matchup here for the number 16 seed in the West. Moving on to the number 10 seed in the Midwest. This one's pretty interesting. You got Colorado State versus Virginia. Virginia, obviously, I have them winning this one here. I think Virginia is definitely obviously the better team here in this first four matchup. So I got Virginia moving on here to the NCAA tournament. I think they'll be that number 10 seed here in the Midwest region. And then moving on, we got Grambling State versus Montana State. I got Montana State moving on here, the number 16 seed Midwest matchup here in the first four. So that is my prediction here. I think Montana State becomes that number 16 seed here in the Midwest. And then the last first four game matchup here, it is the number 10 seed in the South region. I got Colorado versus Boise State. I got the Buffaloes winning this one. I think Colorado's a team that you definitely want to keep an eye on. I think they were in the Pac-12 championship, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to go with Colorado here in this first four matchup here in the number 10 seed South region here. So those are my picks here for the first four games. Let's now get into the real predictions here for the regions. So this is the East region. We'll start with the first round here. In the first round games, I got UConn in the number 1 versus number 16 seeded matchup. Moving on here to the round of 32. Obviously, UConn is the defending national champions. I think they move on pretty easily in the round of the round of 64, I should say. And then FAU, also known as Florida Atlantic, I think they move on here with a close win over Northwestern. Usually those 8 versus 9 seeded matchups are pretty close. And then for Auburn here, the SEC champion, they're taking on Yale. I think Auburn will move on here to the second round, and then I got San Diego State here moving on in the second round as well over the number 12 seed UAB. And then Iowa State here, I got them moving on from South Dakota State. That's not going to be an easy game here for the Cyclones, but I got the Big 12 champions moving on here to the second round in the East region. And then I got my first upset here happening. I got Drake upsetting the number 7 seed in Washington State. I think Drake is a team that you don't want to sleep on if you're in the NCAA tournament. I think Drake does move on here and upsets Washington State. And then I got Illinois beating Montana State, a pretty good Montana State team to keep an eye on. I was very close to making this one an upset here, but I'm going to go with Illinois here, the Big Ten champion, to move on here into the second round. And then I got Duquesne here getting an upset over BYU. Duquesne just won their conference championships. I'm going to go with Duquesne here to upset here on BYU here in the first round of the East region. All right, let's now go to the round of 32 games here. UConn versus FAU. I got UConn moving on here to the Sweet 16. I think it's a pretty close game, though. I think UConn does win it, though, at least by maybe 5 points or something like that. And then Auburn here. I got Auburn moving on. I think they'll defeat San Diego State in a pretty close one. And then I got Iowa State moving on here with a win over Drake. I think it's going to be a pretty tough game there for for Iowa State, but I think Iowa State does move on. And then I got Duquesne upsetting Illinois here. Yes, I know that sounds crazy, but I'm going to go with Duquesne here to upset Illinois here in the East region, second round of the round of 32. So those are my matchups here for the Sweet 16. I got UConn versus Auburn, and then I got Iowa State here versus Duquesne. So let's start with UConn versus Auburn here, or I should say let's make some picks here in the Sweet 16. This is pretty much the East Region semifinal. I got Auburn and Iowa State moving on here. I think it will be Auburn versus Iowa State here in the Elite Eight. I think Auburn knocks out the defending national champions, the UConn Huskies, here in the Sweet 16. I don't feel very confident with that prediction, but I'm going to go with it anyway just because I think Auburn has that motivation factor. And then Iowa State coming off the Big 12 championship. I think they have some good momentum going into, the rest of the way here in the East region. And then it comes down here to the Elite Eight between Iowa State and Auburn. I'm going to be taking the Auburn Tigers to win the East region here. And again, I think Auburn is a team that is going to be very dangerous heading into the NCAA tournament. Like I said, I don't feel very confident with this prediction, but I'm going to go with the Tigers here to move on to the Final Four. So those are my predictions here for the East region. Let's now move on to the next region, and that is the South region. The number one seed in this tournament is Houston, so we'll start with first round picks here. This is my first round picks. I got Houston here, the number one seed, moving on. The team that just lost the Big 12 championship. I think they'll regain confidence and beat the number 16 seed here. And then I got Texas A&M beating Nebraska here, the number 8 versus number 9 matchup. The Aggies are a team that keep an eye on here in the NCAA tournament. They upsetted Kentucky in that quarterfinal matchup in the SEC tournament, so keep an eye out for the Aggies. I got Duke moving on here to the second round with a win over Vermont. It's not going to be a pretty easy game here for Duke. I mean, this is a team that just lost in the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. I think Duke does get past the first round at least. And then I got James Madison here, the number 12 seed, upsetting Wisconsin. James Madison is a great team. This is a team to keep an eye on here. Maybe they don't get to the Final Four, but maybe they could possibly do that. So watch out here for James Madison. And then I got Marquette beating Western Kentucky, and then I got Florida beating Colorado here. Florida's another team kind of similar to Texas A&M to keep an eye on in this NCAA tournament. And then you got Kentucky here. Kentucky has got a great offensive team, but their defense just hasn't been very good. But I think Kentucky does get past the first round at least. And then Texas Tech, I got them upsetted by NC State. It doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. I don't think this is a big upset, to be honest, because the Wolfpack just won the ACC championship. And I think NC State is also another team to keep an eye on here in the NCAA tournament. So those are my predictions here for the round of 64. Moving on to the round of 32. I got Texas A&M pulling off an upset here. I know that sounds crazy, but upsets do happen. And I think this is a Texas A&M team to keep an eye on here in this region. I think they're going to definitely make a big run here in this region. So Texas A&M, I got them moving on. And then James Madison, I got them upsetting Duke here. It wouldn't really shock me if James Madison did upset Duke here. Duke obviously is a program that's really choked in the NCAA tournament over the years. Yes, they did make the Final Four in Mike Krzyzewski's final year, but it's still a Duke team that, did lose the ACC quarterfinals, and maybe that's not where they want to be. So I got James Madison pulling off an upset here. And then Florida, I got them upsetting Marquette here, the number 2 seed. I think Florida is definitely a better team here and probably the more faster team. And then NC State, I got them beating Kentucky here. I know Kentucky is a great offensive team, but can they play defense? That's the question mark going into the NCAA tournament for Kentucky. I got them going down here in the second round against the Wolfpack. So these are my matchups here in the Sweet 16. Let's now make some Sweet 16 predictions here in the South region. I got Texas A&M and NC State moving on here to the Elite Eight. So Texas A&M, the number 9 seed, I think moves on here with a close game against James Madison. I think this one goes back and forth. And then Florida versus NC State. This is also a pretty back and forth contest. But I'm going to go with the upset here. I got the Wolfpack moving on here to the Elite Eight. And then the South region final here for this one. I am taking the Wolfpack in this one. I like NC State to get it done. And again, this is a team that just won the ACC championship. They upsetted North Carolina, so with that being said, I'm going to go with the Wolfpack here. I think they have some good momentum going into this NCAA tournament. So I am taking NC State here to move on to the South, or actually in the Final Four, and I am taking them as the South Region champions here. So let's move on now to the next region, and that's the West Region. We got North Carolina, the number 1 seed, so let's make some round of 64 picks here. I got North Carolina moving on here with a pretty easy win over Howard. I know they just lost the ACC championship, but I think North Carolina is going to regain some confidence going the rest of the way. Mississippi State, I got them beating Michigan State here in the number 8 versus number 9 matchup. Mississippi State is a team that, upsetted Tennessee in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament. And then Charleston, I got them upsetting Alabama here. Alabama hasn't just been really playing well these few days, and I think Charleston does pull off an upset here with the way Alabama's been playing. And then I got Grand Canyon upsetting St. Mary's here. This is a pretty good Grand Canyon team, so I'm going to go with Grand Canyon here to pull off the upset. And then Arizona versus Nevada, I got Arizona actually moving on here after a win over Long Beach. And then I got Nevada upsetting Dayton here. Dayton was eliminated in their first round of their conference tournament, so I'm going to go with Nevada here to pull off the upset. And then I got Baylor moving on here to the second round with a win over Colgate. And then I got New Mexico upsetting Clemson here, so I got another upset here. I'm going with a lot of upsets here just because of how crazy this college basketball season has been. Anything can happen in this tournament, and like I said, I don't feel very confident with these picks. So those are my round of 64 predictions here for the West region. Moving on to the round of 32 matchups, I got North Carolina beating Mississippi State in a close one, and then I got Grand Canyon beating Charleston here in the round of 32. So I got them moving on to the Sweet 16, and then I got Arizona moving on here to the Sweet 16, and then I got Baylor. I think they do in that Cinderella run of New Mexico here a little bit early, and I got them moving on here to play Arizona in the Sweet 16. So let's now make my predictions here for the Sweet 16. I got North Carolina and Baylor here. I'm going to go with North Carolina to upset, or actually not upset Grand Canyon, beat Grand Canyon, ending their Cinderella run. And then Baylor, I got them upsetting the number 2 seed here in Arizona. I think Baylor is definitely a better team than Arizona. Not saying they're like going to win them, but I think Baylor is obviously going to have a lot of motivation going into this tournament as well. So that means we get a North Carolina versus Baylor matchup here. So this prediction here, I'm going to go with North Carolina here in the West region as the West region champs here in this one. I know this is a really terrible prediction here for the Tar Heels, and I know they just lost the ACC championship, but I think the Tar Heels will be ready here, and I think that North Carolina Tar Heels are going to be the only number 1 seed probably to make it into the NCAA Final Four, to be honest, but we may not see a top seed in the Final Four this year because of how crazy this season has been. But I am going to be taking the North Carolina Tar Heels to defeat Baylor here in the West Region final. I think it's a close game, but I think the Tar Heels will be able to prevail in this one. So this is my West Region predictions here for the NCAA tournament. Let's move on now to the last region here, and that's the Midwest region. First off, we got Purdue, of course, the number 1 seed. Let's make my predictions here for the Midwest region first round. For my first round picks, I got Purdue here moving on pretty easily. I got Utah State beating TCU here in a pretty close one in the 8 versus 9 matchup. And then I got Kansas. They've been having some issues as of late, but I think they move on at least here in the first round. I know Hunter Dickinson probably not going to be playing in this one, but I got Kansas moving on. And then I got Gonzaga here defeating McNeese here in the first round. I think they move on and they'll play Kansas here in the second round. Tennessee, obviously losing the quarterfinals here in the SEC tournament. I think Tennessee moves on at least, but St. Peter's is a team to keep an eye on. Remember, they upset Kentucky, the number 2 seed, a couple years ago. Could they do that again and make another magical run in the NCAA tournament? I don't think it's going to be this year. I think Tennessee does take care of business. And then Virginia, I got them upsetting Texas here. I don't really think it's a big upset, but I'm going to go with the Cavaliers anyway. And then I got Creighton here moving on pretty easily. And then I got Oregon upsetting South Carolina. I know the Gamecocks have been a really big surprise this year, but keep an eye on Oregon. They're a dangerous team coming up here in the NCAA tournament. So those are my picks here for the first round matchups. And then we got Purdue versus Utah State here, or I should say we got the round of 32 here. So let's make my picks here for the Midwest region, round of 32. I got Purdue here defeating Utah State, and then I got Gonzaga upsetting Kansas Kansas here. So I got the Jayhawks going down here in the second round. Again, no Hunter Dickinson means that it's going to be very tough for Kansas to kind of, move on to the Final Four and everything. It's going to be very difficult for them to make a deep run in this NCAA tournament. So I got the Bulldogs moving on, Gonzaga here moving on to the Midwest region semifinals, and then I got Tennessee defeating Virginia here, and then I got Oregon upsetting the number 3 seed in Creighton. I'm telling you, Oregon is definitely going to be a very good team going into this NCAA tournament. So we got the Midwest region semifinals here. Let's make my picks here for the Sweet 16. So in the Sweet 16, I got Gonzaga and Oregon here. I'm going to go with 2 upsets here. I think Gonzaga upsets the number 1 seed Purdue, and then I got Oregon upsetting the number 2 seed in Tennessee. So I am picking Oregon and Gonzaga here in the Midwest region semifinals, and that brings us to the Midwest region final here. This is a very tough one here, but I'm going to go with Oregon here. I like Oregon here in this one, so I'm going to pick the Ducks here to move on to the Midwest region, or I should say to the Final Four, but they will be Midwest region champions here for me. So I am going to pick the Oregon Ducks here, and these are my predictions here for the Midwest region. Like I said, Midwest region bracket. Like I said, I don't feel very confident with all these region picks here for each and every single region, but let's now get into my Final Four predictions here. This is my Final Four bracket. So I got North Carolina and Auburn here, NC State and Oregon. So let's make my predictions here for the Final Four. So in the Final Four here, I got Auburn upsetting North Carolina here. I think this Auburn team is definitely going to be a motivation factor. Like I said, I think they'll definitely make a deep run here into this NCAA tournament. So I do got them upsetting North Carolina there. And then I got NC State and Oregon here, 2 11 seeds that I think will go at it here in the Final Four. Like I said, I don't feel very confident that it's going to happen, but it is my prediction, so I'm going to go with NC State here to move on, though, to defeat Oregon. And we got Auburn versus NC State here in the championship game. I tell you what, this is a very tough one to call, but, Auburn, and NC State are 2 teams that won their conference championships. I think both of these teams are going to make a deep run, but at the end of the day, I do like the motivation factor of this Auburn team and also in Bruce Pearl's head coaching. I do like his coaching a little bit better than NC State's coaching staff. So I'm going to go with the Tigers here to win it all in the national championship. And I also got them winning the whole thing here in the NCAA tournament as well. So I'm going to be picking the Auburn Tigers here as my national champion this year. I think last year's prediction for me was Texas. So I was a little bit more kind of conservative with my predictions this year and kind of, looked at all the teams and everything, kind of compared their stats and everything. And that's the reason why I'm taking Auburn here in this one. So again, Auburn Tigers are my pick here to win the national championship. And like I said, I don't feel very confident with these predictions here for March Madness, but I want to let you guys. I want to know what your picks are. Give me your March Madness predictions down in the comments below, and what do you think about my March Madness predictions? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. And thanks for watching this video. And stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.